We were in the financial investing space back in the day. We completely changed the game from that idea to this idea. YC doesn't really force ideas on you. It's like therapy. YC's approach is like, hey, guys, we have a bunch of data. In my opinion, YC has the most data about startups.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Top of the Hunt. Today, we've got Gaurav with us, who's created Truva AI, a platform that helps streamline your onboarding process with significant gains, there 25% perhaps for the right type of company. He's working primarily with medium businesses, but it would also be an applicable solution for startups and some larger organizations too. He's had a successful startup and an exit, some experience with YC, and he's going to discuss a lot of interesting things with us. He's got a lot of nuggets of information for us today. So without further ado, I'll pass you over. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hey, this is Gaurav. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast. I think I had this entrepreneur bug from my undergrad back when I was in India, but I think there was a lot of learning curve for me. Truba is nowhere near my first tries with the startup. I had a good exit before this with Sleek with a fellow Googler. But even before that, I've tried it a bunch of times, failed. Many of the things that I tried actually are pretty big companies in terms of idea wise. So I think one of the hard lessons I learned was idea is worth dime a dozen basically. It's all about execution. And that's how actually I learned a lot of things just executing through the process. I did work at large companies to learn the industry, how things work in a professional setting, and eventually took the entrepreneurial plunge in 2020 with my first startup. I was talking about Speak, and now I'm on to True.
Okay, that's interesting. So, from the big companies, what was your sort of key takeaway for what you could take from there to a startup?
I think one thing I learned is more than tech, it's actually about people. Coming from the engineering background, and in India, I have this thing. Everyone actually first become an engineer and then decide what they want to do with their life. And I think I was in that bucket. Although I really loved engineering. It's not that I can do it for free.
Mhm.
I really enjoy it. But you need to actually get your point across. You need to understand what are the real needs of the users. And I learned a lot of these things when I was in large companies as well as in my own experiences. So I think there's a human element is what I had learned through my like 10 years. I'll give an example where in LinkedIn, working on a tool which was supposed to be the next big thing in terms of like the workflow systems. Something like a simplified version of Airflow, if you're familiar with the system. And the team was already working on it for quite a long time. But eventually we realized actually the system that we're building makes things more complicated. And our seniors and leaders decided not to do that. So basically it's like sunk cost of for a year. And it's not just my effort. People who are much senior to me were also part of the team. So that was a learning. If users cannot use your thing, it's basically useless.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Quite a difficult lesson when you're on it. I imagine one day they say to you, "We're actually going to shelve that project that you've been working so hard on, that you've had so many sleepless nights over, and then we're just going to throw it in the wind." It's like, hang on, why? And then they explain it to you, and it's actually later on you're thinking, "We need to make sure we don't do that again." It's a good lesson. So, which company was that for? Was that when did you say Google?
LinkedIn. So that was my
LinkedIn.
first role in the Valley. And to be honest, I was amazed why our director decided to do what they did.
Hmm.
But now it explained why they are at a level they are. They understand like the things, the leadership, the human element, as I was talking about, and the managing so deeply and so well.
I think one of the things with big companies like LinkedIn, they've got so many users. There must be so many use cases and other things, and maybe it worked for one subset, and then as they start to expand that out, it might not have worked anymore. It's interesting. So from there, you've mentioned Sleek. What was Sleek?
Like any other startup, like me and Spanna, we met through the Zoogla community and we wanted to do a startup. So we were in that bucket, people who wanted to do a startup. I had some ideas. We started with actually something very different, what it ended up being. We started with a simple order here. If you go to a mom and pop shop, people should be able to order from their phone wherever they are by scanning a QR code. And when we started, QR code was not really a thing. In US, we used to go to people and they were like, "What's a QR code?" And now, if I go to any restaurant, a QR code is such a standard. From that, it went to a very different game of wait time detection. We tried a lot of things on computer vision, analytics, wait time, dynamic pricing. So I think things evolved as we made more progress and learned about users. And I think it was a good learning experience to be honest. And my role was different. I was a CTO there. I did more of those kind of things. So yeah, a lot of learning curves for me.
So from the evolution, was that based upon the initial feedback you had, or did you just see competitors? How did it evolve?
Mostly about the feedback actually. I remember going to this sort of like a picnic fair kind of thing that was organized in the city in SF, and there was a moment where there's something in it where there was this restaurant, I think Angry, not Angry Bird or something like Bird, I think Bird was the name. They used to sell a specific kind of chicken sandwich which was like really popular, and we went with them, hey, maybe we can give wait time analytics whatever. And so many people used it, we had to shut it down. That was the moment I realized, okay, that's an interesting point of view. And that was the first moment I think I felt like there's something in it. And with that, a lot of things happened. And eventually, speaking with people, we altered things. And in the even in the end, we were actually trying a lot of things, actually. Trying a lot of things. We played a lot with computer vision, security cameras. We spent a lot of time on those things.
It's interesting. Those types of things. I can remember when Amazon had they did a shop in London a few years ago where it was a checkoutless operation, and all of those types of things would have been going on. And it's you look and you think, "Oh, blimey, are we there yet?" And then obviously a few years later, you start to see that they were perhaps a bit early, but the tech's getting there, isn't it? Where that's could be life in the not so distant future for the majority of it's interesting. So you've mentioned from there that there's an exit. Well, what was that like? How did that treat you?
I think it was a sweet exit given the circumstances, and it was like a we are seed stage, so it was not like a big life changing event to me, but I think it was like a boost of confidence. Investors were more happy on the things, and things worked out. I would say in the end.
I think it's often say it's like starting a business. It's like having a new baby, but then you've given that baby away very young. Did it not pull at your heartstrings a little bit, or was it pure math decision?
No, it was not just a math decision. It was a decision from a couple of things. It was a decision based in the market we are playing in, which was SMB business, SMB players. Plus, where it was COVID time, different times also,
Mm-hmm.
and also we had few interest from parties. So we thought, okay, this might be our moment, and we went with it. Because eventually we also realized, like, do we want to build in the same space for 10 years? Because startup is a very long game,
Mm-hmm.
and given the circumstances, given the offer, we chose to go with it.
So from there, do you think you've taken many lessons away for starting Truva?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think like a lot of things, to be honest. Like when I started to work, like back in the day, even before Sleek, when I was at Lightspeed for some time, Lightspeed Fellowship is a thing. It's a 3 month program by Lightspeed, the VC, where they invest a small amount and kind of ask you to explore ideas, try things. This was before Sleek, and that's how Lightspeed invested in Sleek also. I think there was a lot of question marks. How do you actually raise funds? How do you actually hire people? Because hiring in Google is very different from hiring in a startup. In hiring Google, they already pre-vetted 50 candidates. And as an engineering manager, like TL, you just pick and go with it. So all of them are pre-vetted. You don't have to sell them, hey, why you should join Google.
Yeah.
But by the time like I started Trua, it was very clear to me actually how to raise a seed round. Like it was very obviously clear. It was very obviously clear how to run a hiring pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So these things were up to the point where I had seen the journey in Sleek. It was very efficient, smooth, to be honest. Beyond that, they were like learning. So, okay, now we have raised a bunch of money. Now we have hired the team. We have hired this initial PMF. We have this much revenue. How do you scale beyond those numbers? So those were learning curves. So taking things to the point where we were at Sleek, I think really helped me because I have been through the journey. So being through the journey really helps, in my opinion.
I think learning from experience is far better than a textbook, isn't it? So you've done that, as you say, it was perhaps an easier process or a more efficient process, and then bringing it to Truva, it's fantastic that you're able to do so. So it's like, how did you come up with the idea for Truva? What's it all about?
So actually, my co-founder came up with the idea for Trua, to be honest, and the space we play in was actually established space. So it came out of pure frustration from her point of view. She was like, "Hey, when you use a complicated software like AWS, you log into a system that's basically like the cockpit of an aeroplane.
Mhm.
It's so many buttons and whistle. Same can be said with other stuff like a CRM system. If you use Salesforce or even HubSpot, for the matter, has a lot of things. So we have been using all these things in like fast food startup. We're like, I really don't want to be an expert in running rippling or using HubSpot. I want to be an expert in my own market. I want to be an expert in what I want to build, not really running these current processes, day-to-day operational tasks. There must be a better way to actually automate these things. That was the initial hunch
Mhm.
where I should just go and tell them, hey, I need this done. Can someone please help me do it? I'm a more old school AI person. Back in the day when SVM classifier and all those kind of things were there, and she was really into Gen AI, and she brought my attention into it. And with a lot of exploration, we figured this is a known space. There are companies who are like billions of dollars who are actually in this space. If you had seen the product tools, if you open a software, there's like click here kind of thing. These are like very large companies actually who are building this, which I was amazed to learn. And then one thing led to another. We realized actually this is a known space. Let's play in the market. People are frustrated by building all those product tools. It's painful, it's hard to maintain. And if they have chatbots, the source of the new bot, one size fit all solution is what people are selling, or they are selling things that take 6 months to actually implement. So if you go and check out Google Dialogflow or check out other some of the other players, I don't want to name them, but they will take 3 to 6 months actually just to set up, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the problem we realize, and that's the problem we're solving. So what we're doing is we are working with mid-market software providers, somewhere who, like, not huge guys who are making like 500 million ARR, but helping these mid-market companies, giving a personalized VIP experience to their customers. So customers are basically happy, and we feel as a user also we'll see all these technologies in the software that we use.
I've tried AWS once, and I ended up getting billed for 4 months, even though I thought I'd cancelled because I couldn't figure it out. It was just atrocious. It's not their fault, but it's just obviously that they've let somebody like me in who shouldn't have been in there. And then that's the point where I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Of there's a lot more people like me in the world than there is AWS experts. By the time I use AWS, I use HubSpot, I use a bunch of other things, I'm going to be in a position where very quickly I was a marketer, and now I'm a tech expert or I'm a subject matter expert inside a particular piece of software. And it's like, what do you do for a living? I fix AWS. I thought you were. I used to be a marketer, but now this is what I do. So it's interesting. So outside of your sort of identification of the problem, what did you do to validate it?
We actually spoke with like a lot of people. So a lot of people in our network, obviously from Google, Stanford, Berkeley, because that's basically our network, and kind of reached out to people who are in the product or customer success roles.
Mm-hmm.
And either they were struggling with retention problems or they solved retention problems by some means. Example of solving could be having an expensive onboarding call. So if you give an onboarding call with every customer, like 1 hour, you solve that, but it's an expensive process. The
Mm-hmm.
struggle is they're trying to figure it out. So we spoke with a lot of these people and they were like, this seems interesting. This seems like a very sweet spot in terms of where you can give personalized experience, but still not overwhelm the user. Like some experiences are like in your face, where you have to get an onboarding call or you have to do it. Sometimes users are not there yet. People want to take their own time, get a feel of it, and then do things. So it's like the right controls are there, and that's where we feel like there's a need, and that's how we start building. I think we are still like long way to go to complete all the things bells and whistle. We just launched the bare minimum version on Product Hunt last month.
It's interesting. I think you're right. I've been a bunch of times. Even today, I was looking at a piece of software, and I had to book a call for onboarding. And I've came across you from a Google search, and you came up as a top competitor of the other thing I was looking for. So I'm at very early discovery. I'm not there yet to give you an hour of my time to learn a software. By the time I finish 10 pieces of software, I might have I've done 15 hours worth of onboarding calls to then choose one. It's a massive waste of time if you have to do it that way. And it'll be interesting to see what the dropout rate is for some of your companies that you work with, to say this is where we've improved sort of the flow of customers by maybe 10, 15, 20%, from booking a call to being able to do some sort of onboarding or doing it after the fact. It'd be interesting to know. When you get that, I'm sure it'll be a massive selling point.
Yeah, we are trying to get all those numbers. So we are trying to run, like, we are right now running pilots and really trying to prove things by numbers. It's my opinion versus your opinion, right? When I have numbers, it's much easier to explain things and talk about it.
Yeah. No, but if your facts trump mine, then it's a very easy sell to make, isn't it? So I saw you went through YC with Truva. Did you not want to go back down the other route that you mentioned before with the other startup, or the startup
Um,
Lightspeed you mentioned?
that was a very different thing. I was part of Lightspeed Fellowship and they wrote a small check in Sleek. Lightspeed is a seed stage in a few things, by the way. When we went to YC, we actually went with let's figure something out in this space kind of thing. And we were actually doing something very different. We were doing a very different idea back then. This was not the idea we went with. And one thing led to another, and we ended up with Trua and rebranded things and such. So it was much earlier as compared to we would have gone to Lightspeed and asked for capital. Premature is the idea where we think we went with. And I think YC as a community has given us a lot. And this space we're playing in, I think YC is at a great advantage because we are selling to these mid-sized companies. And many of these startups, once they grow, are mid-sized actually. Not a lot of them actually make it to $100 billion valuation, $10 billion valuation. A lot of them are like hovering around hundreds of millions. And they are still struggling with these kind of solutions. They're looking for cost-effective way to solve it. So that's where we come in. So I think the community will be really helpful for us.
It's interesting. I think it's YC is able to dog food their own startups in a sense.
Exactly. It's amazing how many startups are able to sell to each other, which is
Mm.
like mind blowing to me, to be honest. Like I was not thinking of things in this fashion, but when I spoke to some of the YC alums, I learned about this, and I think that was basically like a game changer. You can actually sell to your own friends slash batchmates, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, obviously YC is a bit of a dream and beyond aspiration. So what would you say would be a key piece of advice for somebody looking to apply?
So we got accepted on our third attempt. First attempt in Truva, but third attempt overall in my life. I
Mhm.
had done YC interview twice
Okay.
before Truva. I had done once with Sleek, and I had done once with a completely different idea from the Lightspeed days when we were doing the investing app. So I had experience, I would say, again
Mhm.
about how to do it. This is my take about YC. I think YC two times in the journey of your startup, I think where you can apply to YC where like your chances are maximum. One is in the very early days when you have gone out, you have actually spoken to people, you have some rough ideas, maybe like a POC, you have a good thesis where things will work out, and you have very strong background in this space that you're playing in, or you have like past exits in the space or whatever in that space. So there is a lot of possibilities because things are in the opinion phase. It's like my opinion versus YC partner's opinion versus your opinion versus a random guy's opinion. So it's about convincing with story. That's one example where you can just get in possibly with a good story, good background, a good narrative, and then really try to prove yourself in the idea,
Mhm.
pivot, whatever. Second is when you actually have hard fact numbers, where you are actually live, when you actually have like customers with 30% month over month or week over week growth going on. That's when YC would love to take you. It's like a slam dunk move. So I
Mhm.
think they're like these two sweet spot in my opinion. We were in the former because we are nowhere close to a product, and it was a very different product also. So it was I think these are two sweet spot in my opinion. But not getting into YC is not end of the world. In my previous startup, we tried, we went to the interview, but we didn't get into YC. So it's not end of the world. We did pretty well in my last startup also.
Mm. No, it's interesting. I think there's quite a lot of companies and founders who I've seen, particularly on Reddit, for example, where they look as their YC application as validation of their idea. And is it though? Because you might have a fantastic idea to go and work on, but you might not have a great sort of founder YC fit, as it were. So if you don't have a great technical background, if you don't have a technical co-founder, if you haven't had that previous exit, you're in a position where perhaps you would get rejected at that stage because you need something else and the idea might not even be assessed. So it's interesting, obviously, because Sleek, you've demonstrated you exited. So it was a good idea and somebody was prepared to pay for it. So it's YC, did they miss out on the opportunity? Maybe not. Obviously, you can look back and you can say, we could have done X amount better with YC if we'd have been through, or it might have been YC might have had you pivoted away from Sleek and then all of a sudden
Mm.
it's a completely different product because it's because you've mentioned with Truva, is it, would you say it's a pivot, a hard pivot, or would you say it's more of a completely different thing?
It's a hard pivot. It's a major hard pivot. We were in the financial investing space back in the day. We completely changed the game from that idea to this idea. But I also want to say about the YC. YC doesn't really force ideas on you. It's like therapy if you think about this. YC's approach is like, hey guys, we have a bunch of data. In my opinion, YC has the most data about startups. Think of it, imagine a decision tree. They have a lot of startups who have gone through all the data points in the decision tree. So they have ideas. Hey, typically this thing work and this thing doesn't work. It's up to you. You guys are smart people. You guys figure out and you guys execute. They will not force decision on you, but they will give their own opinion, obviously, and they have their own data-driven idea. But they never force ideas on you. It's prove us wrong. Yeah, they'll be happy to be proven wrong, and you go really viral or you go really big, and they are investors, so they'll be happy. They are more than happy to be proven wrong in that regard.
No, that's very interesting. I can imagine you turning up and you're thinking they're going to tell you what to do, and then, as you say, it's a therapy session. But I suppose a good therapist will help you solve your own problems. So, do you need a mentor who's going to shove things down your throat, or do you need someone who's going to help you get to the right decision? And I think the therapist is a better option. So, from there, would you say YC's impacted much of your journey so far with Truva?
Yeah, I think there's a significant impact for sure. I think we made less mistakes than we would have made. We did make a lot of other mistakes. We learned a lot of things on execution side, and it's always a learning journey. It's like a puzzle. If I give you a jigsaw puzzle and I ask you to solve it, solving it first time will take more time than solving it second time and subsequent times. So it's very similar to that.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting analogy because I tried a jigsaw puzzle for the first time in a while, and it's an interesting concept. They give you a different picture to what's actually on the jigsaw. So the first time it's, let's say for example, it might be a picture of like a 1960s office, and it turns out that the jigsaw is actually a 1600s castle, and you've got to figure out whether the people are in the same places and those types of things. And I think that's often what most startups are working through, where they don't actually know what the picture is yet, but they think they do. And then as they get further down the road, they'll realize actually that wasn't the picture we were looking at. And that's the way they've moved through life. So it's interesting. It's a good analogy. Sort of from there, with back to Truva a bit more, you've got your target customer. It is quite tightly focused. Why I see companies fit into there. Obviously, the booking a demo can be quite scary for people. So from there, how would that integrate for somebody? Are they going to have, they've got their own dashboard with you and they're able to see everything?
Yes. So we give them a dashboard where they can provide all the context, their own APIs, and any kind of other detail they want us to provide. And that we learn, our model learn, and we give you an AI account manager. Our
Mm.
account manager can do three things for you. It can answer the generic questions about users. Users tell their goals, and it will list out, hey, this is how you can achieve it. I can actually do things for you, which is the fun part. Typically, it'll take months for people to figure out all the possible ways your users can actually invoke. But in our case, there's almost no overhead on the user side. Third is we can also show and nudge users. So we can also show people in the UI, hey, you're asking me to do this. This is how you want it done. Now the click here can also be done like the product tools kind of thing in a more human way where you're not bombarded. Hey, you just signed up. Go through this 10-step product tool. It's not like that. And as our agent is doing all those things, we collect a lot of data. And you have access to all this data, but this data kind of feeds in and improve our thing.
Mm.
So a lot of detailed data is gathered from this process. And you can run a small experiment to see actually what the benefit your users are actually getting from this.
I can imagine after a while when a company's onboarded, and then after a company's started onboarding their customers, and they've maybe done 1,000, I can imagine the data that you have and the ability to
Mm.
learn from them will be staggering. Just from 1,000 people, let alone when you start getting aggregated perhaps across multiple platforms. The data you will have on customers, I think, will be incredibly beneficial to those companies. Because if I was to develop your solution for our tool by itself, we would only ever have insights from what we think has worked. Whereas you'll be able to say these are all the best practices across 1,000 companies of your size. That would be significantly better for us because it means I don't have to sit and try and figure out in my own head, am I getting in my own way because this is the way it should be done? And it's just, no, like this is all the best practices. So from there,
Definitely.
are you going to be introducing like email integrations and stuff so you could send stuff around in different places for them?
So we are post sign up. We already have email integration and actually a pretty exhaustive list of integrations. Working with another YC company to help us with integrations. But we are post sign up. So it's not really an engagement platform. There are engagement platform where people suppose you sign up and you actually never visit their platform and they email you, message you, call you, bug you. You cannot do that. That's not our aim. Our aim is when you are on the surface, when you're using their app or on the web, wherever you are, we want to empower people to have the best possible experience by working with these software providers. So that is how we're thinking of it right now.
Okay. So do you only work with mid-sized companies, or could anybody sign up and use Truva?
So we do work with larger platforms like HubSpot. So we work not directly with the company, we work with the implementation partners there.
Mhm.
There are people who actually take HubSpot and these larger Salesforce, even like the larger payroll softwares, and they help implement those softwares for customers. And these large companies, it's hard to get even changes in the product and everything. So given our size, it's very hard for us to get started with large companies right away. We're working with these implementation partners where you have a Chrome plugin, and that Chrome plugin adds a new layer. So that's how our current HubSpot process work.
Okay.
So if you're a mid-sized company, we can directly work with you. We set up everything. Effort is on us. Easy onboarding for you, and you add a snippet or a small SDK. Things work. If you are the customer of large softwares and you are already working with an implementation partner, ask about us. We work with partners to actually give you guys an integrate softwares. We are not on AWS yet, but we are on a lot of CRM systems. So that's how you can have us.
Okay. So what would the financial benefit be, do you think? Can you calculate that for your solution over an alternative at the moment?
On the approach where we are working with the customer software provider side, it's again the experiments are like ongoing right now, but numbers are like in double digits. The drop off rate has improved substantially. On implementation partner side is mostly about time saving. We don't have any empirical data yet, but we are very excited about the former where we are working with software providers and the drop off has substantially improved
Mm.
because drop off directly related to revenue.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So would you be able to put a ballpark, 5 to 10%, or 20 to 25%? Do you have any sort of rough estimate there?
It's around 25% actually.
25. That's
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah, like I cannot name them, but there is actually someone you're talking to. They have about 50% drop off in first 3 months, and they are making more than $100 million revenue. And not everything is because of this, but imagine if they can fix their entire drop off,
Yeah.
then they can basically double their revenue. And even if suppose 20% of it is because of this, it's a big number. It's millions of dollars for them.
Yeah, definitely. I can remember there being a lot of people misunderstood it, but there was an article from the Harvard Business Review many years ago, and it was talking about how it's significantly more valuable to keep a customer than to get new ones. And people over focused on the customer service part. Like, we still need to get people into that funnel. But obviously, what you're doing is you're enabling people to have that best of both worlds. So I could keep doing marketing, but then I know that obviously from what Truva comes along and does, the onboarding process, the drop off is covered. So I wouldn't need to focus on it. So I can look and I've said, actually, my overall sales funnel's improved at just one position by 25%. That's a staggering number for a lot of small businesses. It's fantastic.
Yeah, like $100 million company is leaving $100 million, 20% of it, $20 million. We fix 20% of it is $4 million roughly. So early numbers looks exciting, but again, we are still making things and we are making sense out of it.
It's very well done. Hopefully, you're able to get these numbers out and get everything consolidated, and it's a much easier sales call. Hey, dude, we can help you by this percentage. Can you prove it? Yeah, we can. Just go and download our Chrome extension, and you'll see. If we don't improve by this, by that, then you can have your money back or whatever. It's fantastic. So, what's the long-term plan for Truva? What would the all the bells and whistles and everything in place? What would the platform look like?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that needs to be built. One of the example is an integration with a service provider. Like we do integrate with like Zendesk kind of players. We are covering this pre-grievances, post-sign-up phase where customers are just new to the platform and trying to learn things.
Mm.
But we have been asked, like, can you also cover the customer service aspect as an example? That's like a big ask. Going multilingual is a big ask. I know that a lot of AI companies will just throw multilingual, being, hey, it's very easy, data privacy, all this geolocation, but covering all these nuances and the regulation piece. So regulations are very different in Europe, where you're based, as compared to
Mm.
US. So building for the global area and companies in this segment that we're focusing on, and I think is a big challenge, and we're striving towards it. And still day one for us, to be honest. It's just we're just getting started.
I spoke to a founder recently who's got a voice based app, and he was wanting to translate it into Chinese, and he was a native speaker. And he said it's just not there yet. It's just not very good. So it's one of those things where you're right on how long does it take to get this right? And it might be 6 months, it could be the way OpenAI and everything's going, it might be next week. Who knows? I think it's a wonderful sounding product for a lot of people that they should consider, because if you're in that revenue band, at the end of the day, if this is your type of job and you've got to look at the retention of customers, what would the target job title be, would you say, if you were doing like outreach on LinkedIn? Who would you be looking for?
Either chief of product, chief of revenue, or in some cases it's customer success leader. So like customer success, product, or RevOps. We do give money back guarantee, by the way. I think you touched on this. So we do give money back guarantee.
Yeah.
If you're not happy, we don't want you to spend time with us. It's okay. We do give money back guarantee.
So is it any of those job roles now, if I was to come along and I'm able to cut 25% off from this point, and my boss doesn't know what tool I've used, I look like a genius, you know? So it's well done.
Yeah, like it's just in different orgs, different people are responsible for churn, renewal, sign up. So it's typically either product or RevOps is what we have seen, mostly RevOps. But yeah, in rare cases, customer success.
Yeah, okay. Now I can see that. So was it your first launch on Product Hunt for Retruva, and you came Product of the Day? Why did you think Product Hunt was a good platform for you?
So this was my first launch via Truva, but we had a launch with Sleek before.
Yeah.
So this is again not the first time. I'm very familiar with the product hunt space and somewhat decently active. We went with product hunt because a lot of actually developers, community, startup people are in that space. And it's recently popular in YC also. So we thought it's a good way to actually seek early feedback. Product is still in the very early days. People are seeing ROI, but there's a lot of things to be built and done. Once we're done, I think there's a lot of things that can be done. And that was the rationale behind it. But we had no idea that we'll be product of the day, to be honest. That is not how we thought of it. We're like, hey, we'll launch, we'll see how it goes. We're thinking maybe we'll get 200 votes or something. And that was the expectation early enough in the team also because of different reason. In fact, someone told me, hey, your product is very B2B kind of thing. And these kind of product actually end up not doing so well on product hunt. But I think that was not the case. We got a good number of leads. We got a good number of conversations going from product hunt. Like my calendar has been busy. So we're very excited how things turn out to be.
Now, you've said two things that I think are quite interesting from there. The first one being about YC and using it as a platform. And then obviously the second thing is about the B2B. I think the second one categorically is not true. I think good products shine through most of the time. And then this is where the sort of the YC is interesting, because I've seen quite a few YC companies launch and not achieve top 10. So you must have done something differently to the rest of them, because it's like you look and you can see the product obviously when it launches. You look first thing. We're advantaged in the UK because you launch at midnight in San Francisco, which is 8 o'clock in the morning here. So I can usually have a look at it before I've got to talk to anybody in the day. So I can see them when they're still unlisted and no votes in them. And some of the companies, they're really interesting companies. You can imagine doing very well in a few years' time, but didn't get in the top 10. So what did you do? What was your secret sauce to be first?
I think there's definitely some gamification, and I think there are a lot of good blog posts out there that I'm happy to send. Launching at midnight is one of the things, and that is one thing actually we didn't do at Sleek. At Sleek, I think we launched like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. next day, something like this.
Mhm.
So that was a learning again. And from what I know, I think for first 4 hours, the order of the launches are actually random, because which makes sense. Like from product hunt perspective, they want to give everyone a fair shot, so they are making it random. So anyone who lands on product hunt, they'll probably look at like first 5, 10 kind of thing. So if it's random, it's circulating, so everyone has a fair shot. But after a few hours, you have the actual ranking.
Mhm.
And once you have the actual ranking, very few people actually go to the second page, go below the fold to actually explore all the launches. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy beyond a certain point. So that is a fact that we knew. And that is why we launched at midnight. And we were very clear that we'll launch at midnight. Though we do regret launching on a weekend. That was not a smart decision, because many people in our own batch, YC batch also, as an example, my own network, some of our customers also, they are employees, right? So they're not working on weekends. So that was not a good move, I would
Mhm.
say. In hindsight, I would not launch on a weekend. I would probably launch on like a Tuesday.
Mhm. I think you're right. I spoke to somebody a while ago, Yankun from Wisdom Plan, and he launched on a weekend because he wanted to go for product of the day, and he calculated that would be the optimum time to achieve it. But then the company that he came third, and the two companies that beat him were first and second of the week, because they'd been so popular in the weekend, but that they weren't business to business. And I think that was the key differentiator for your category. Then perhaps you're right. The weekend for B2B is mainly employees of businesses, and thinking, I'm not going on there unless they're trying to keep the streak alive, as it were. They're not on a weekend, are they? Will you be launching again?
Yes, we'll be launching again. We have some very interesting releases coming up in a couple of months. So we'll be launching again soon.
Yeah. So what day are you picking next time?
Definitely a Tuesday or a Monday, something like that. Yeah, because I remember someone from Product Hunt reached out to us. Hey, you are like, apart from the product of the day, we are, I think, third product of UX in the month or week, fourth product of, I think, SaaS in the month, something like we got a few more, I think, SaaS in the month. So that's a big surprise to me, to in that week, because a lot of people were still upvoting us and things went
Mhm.
like a bit, because I pinged a few of my friends. I pinged our customers, hey, show us some love. They came to office on Monday, right? Then that's when they upvoted a lot of time or left feedback and such. So for me, it was a learning, especially in the B2B segment, I think.
That's interesting. So, what are the big features coming?
Without sharing too much, we'll have interesting data, and we're going to do some very interesting things with those data. We're going to automatically improve a lot of experiences that are built. These product tools that are built with enough data, we know what are happy paths in your product, right? We know what are happy paths. We know when a user is doomed to fail, when they're frustrated. Like with enough data, we can figure it out. So we're trying to see how much of it is automatable. So we are running experiments, testing it with our own team internally, and we feel confident things will improve. So we will also add product tools, but we'll add it in a very easy to get started approach. And I think that would be our like next launch most likely.
I can imagine from there. Obviously, it's a second launch is easier than a first, because you've got all of the people who upvoted you last time will get notified. So that kind of gives you a bit of a head start should you time it. So I think watch out for the space, because I know one of the companies from YC Superbase, they've launched 11 times, which is a lot. And then they're really realistically B2B, aren't they? Obviously, they can help startups, but it's more if you're bothered about open source and keeping it on your own service, etc. So there's a model of excellence there for you to follow, because they've smashed out of the park this last time. So maybe you can get in touch with them and ask for some tips. Outside of that, did you do much social media and things for it? You've mentioned a little bit of outreach.
Yeah, I did share from my LinkedIn. I have, I think, 6,000, 7,000 followers. My team shared it across, and some of our investors, customers, whoever were available shared it. So I think we have a good reach from the LinkedIn. Although I think at Twitter, I'm not that active on Twitter. Like I think most of my team is not that active. So I don't think we got a lot of engagement on Twitter, but on LinkedIn, we got a good engagement. Some people reposted our post. I think some influencers also picked up randomly on it and actually asked me. I think those are the guys who are doing a podcast lately. So yeah, so happenstance again. Like I was not really expecting it. I was like, hey, let's do a quick launch, get the word out, see it. But it went way better than we expected. I think in a different world, we would maybe been closer to product of the week or like in top three. And I'm not complaining. I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think from now, obviously, you launch again. It'd be interesting to have you back on, and we can speak about some of the updates and the new things you're doing. I've said this a few times about different products. It could potentially be an unsung hero of a very successful business, where the attributes that you bring into the table, people don't always necessarily know about you, but the people who do are a lot more successful than those who don't. So it'd be interesting to see how things unfold from there.
Thanks for having me. Really excited. Great conversation. I think we have amazing plans ahead. And to be honest, like we never ask anyone to upvote. We ask for feedback. So we got some upvote. We got some very good questions and feedback. A lot of people reached out. So keep the feedback coming. If you're a software provider who's concerned of onboarding retention, drop us a note. I'm happy to just have a look at your numbers, your process, and give feedback or add value wherever we can. And if you're an implementation partner, happy to chat, see where we can help. So very excited. It just let's make it easy for people to use software basically.
Yeah, but please do. The onboarding process can be a minefield. There's a few times I've used software where perhaps 6 months later I figured out how to use it and be like, oh, actually, this is really good. I've enjoyed this now. Whereas when I first started using it because someone said to me or I've been recommended it, I'm using this and I don't really get what's going on here. So I can totally see that. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks for inviting me.